Calling to order the Town of St. John Waterworks District meeting for August 20th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Roll call, or we'll start with the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Are you doing?
You want me to do it?
Yeah, if
John Schaefer,
here.
Nick Furtek,
Present.
Patricia Sims, I'm gonna butcher that last
Close enough, present.
name. Kim Kroll,
Here.
Greg,
Willigorski here.
thank you.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Okay. With that on the agenda, our next item is a presentation by Baker Tilly.
Minutes?
All right, should I use this? Probably. Okay. Hi, everyone. How are you? It's been a while.
You made it.
I did. It always makes me so nervous driving over here because, you know, I feel like you can check how long it takes throughout the day, and then it's like different depending on traffic. So at one point, while I was driving here, it bumped me to be 2 minutes late, even though before I was like 7 minutes early, so I got a little nervous, but then it changed back. So I'm like, oh, okay. It's at Chicago, you know, this area traffic. I'm like, it always gives, it's kind of like 465 in Indianapolis. It always gives you, you know, like a little bit of some time management troubles, but we're here. So hi, again, it's been a while since I've seen you. So I am Amber Nielsen. I'm one of the town and utilities financial advisor. We are here a little bit later in the year than we normally are here. That was for a couple of just reasons, you know, getting the capital plan squared away, scheduling of, you know, what works best for you all and for us at the same time. So I apologize for not being here sooner in the year. But what I'm here to present to you today is the annual financial report that we do for the water utility every single year. So you should have a copy of that report, which is going to go over all of the detail. But I also have a PowerPoint that is on the screen, and you guys should have a copy of the PowerPoint as well that summarizes that report, gives you the high points, and that's kind of what I'm going to talk through. And then I'm going to kind of point your direction at where, you know, maybe the breakdown of something of that is in the report. But really what the report does, and report was dated back in April or May. I don't have it right in front of me. I have the PowerPoint. So a few months ago, and that covered the financials for the water utility for 2024. So what we do after the end of every year, we look at water's financial health. You know, how did revenues come in? How did expenses get spent against the budget? And then we gather information from Bill and Mike on the capital plan for water. And so what we do is we kind of review all of that historical information and then look forward about 5 years of like, where is water headed? Is it a good direction or a direction where we need to revisit some items? So that is what the PowerPoint basically summarizes. So if you want to, start here on slide number 4. And page 2 of the detail report goes over this as well. Historical fund balances, which include the water utilities, cash, and investments. And I will first say that these amounts are the utility fee funds. So this does not include like the water district fund that receives property tax revenues. These are the water utility funds that receive user charges from customers, so that are mainly funded by water rates. Just wanted to forecast that out there. We do a review of the tax fund. It's only one fund. We do that with the town's budget because since it's property tax, it's a little bit different of a process throughout the year, and they'll be budgeting for those property tax dollars here soon. But I just wanted to point that out. So looking back 3 years, which you'll see our report does, water has had very healthy cash balances. You'll probably say, well, why did it decrease cash balances between 23 and 24? And that's solely because water issued bonds in 2021, as you're all aware. So I believe it was maybe about $3 million that you guys got for project costs from issuing those bonds, and you've been spending those down. So that decrease in cash right there is primarily just due to that. If you look on page 2, the detail, it details out the different fund balances for water year over year. You will see that the operation fund for water increased cash, and as well as the system development fund increased cash from 23 to 24 as well. So again, all positive signs. The total decrease is simply due to those project costs being spent down, which we want you guys to be doing. So all good news there. On the next, and please interrupt me if you have questions, you want me to pause anything or review anything in more detail on the detail report or anything, just let me know.
Can you just?
Yes.
One question on page 3, or maybe you're going to get into this right now, as
Yep.
far as on the revenue side.
Yes.
Is that what this is going to be
Yes.
talking about? Okay, I'll let you finish that
Okay.
first, and then we'll go.
Okay, you got it. Let me jump back here. So this next graph on the PowerPoint compares, again, for the last 3 years, your historical revenues of the water utility. So on the screen, the blue kind of column are the operating receipts of water. That's your metered sales, your penalties, your hydrant rental, your operating receipts, what's actually being billed to customers. And then the red are your non-operating receipts. So again, on page 3, you can kind of see in that detail, but that would be like interest income, system development charges, tap fees, things of that nature, which aren't, the revenues that maybe you're getting on a monthly basis, more like evenly throughout the year as you are your operating receipts. And those non-operating receipts do vary typically year over year. Although they have stayed pretty steady for the water utility the past 3 years, as have operating receipts, and you guys have actually seen an increase in operating receipts year over year. So if you look at that blue box, just from 23 to 24, things like your metered sales, in total, that operating has increased about $200,000, which is a good sign. Again, you guys have always been growing and adding new customers, so that is really good for the water utility and the town. Did I answer your question, or do you?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Next slide. And this is going to go into detail on page 4, which as you flip to that detail page 4, you're going to start to see a lot more numbers. So I know it can be overwhelming. But this is basically the 3-year look back of water's historical operating disbursements. So the graph on the PowerPoint, again, is only operating disbursement. So this doesn't include debt or capital outlays. It only includes things like your salaries, your chemicals, the costs that it actually take to operate water year over year. That number actually did come down in 2024, and if you read the bullet there, that was about $200,000 it came down, and that was primarily due to a decrease in purchased water from Cherville, which, to my understanding, that should stop, or it already has stopped. Has it? Okay, perfect. So that is good news, and a lot of that relates back to that 2021 water project I mentioned. I believe a lot of that purpose was to get the town or the water utility to a point where it stops purchasing water. So that is great, and that it will save the water utility quite a bit of money annually. I do mention on the slide, though, that non-operating disbursements consisted of debt service payments, pilot, which is payment in lieu of tax to the general fund of the town, and then as well as capital improvements and project costs that I mentioned you're spending down of about $3.8 million. So starting on that page 4, and if there's any line you want to visit in detail on page 4 of what was spent, we certainly can. Please ask away. But that breaks down line by line those operating disbursements and those non-operating disbursements and what was spent all the way back to 2022 through 2024. And I know on page 4 you'll see the budget columns. I'm going to get to that in just a second. Any questions before I move on?
Do you, by any chance, do you have any this is a lot more easier to read than this. Do you have
Yes.
copies of this stuff with the charts and all that?
The PowerPoint?
Email it out to you or make copies for you after the meeting if you want.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because looking at those charts was a lot more easier than.
Yes, we do have copies. I can email them too, or whoever. Okay. All right. Sorry, flipping back here. Okay. So, in total for 2024, when we look at revenues minus operating expenses, minus the water utilities debt payments, because there are a few bonds outstanding for water, minus your pilot, which is your payment in lieu of tax, that's about $74,000 that you transfer to the general fund for the town every year. And then there was just over $400,000 of capital projects, capital improvements. We do know this calculation, we excluded the project cost from the 2021 bonds because that was like, that had its own separate bucket of money to spend down. So I wanted to provide you with a true cash flow of if we excluded kind of those project costs and everything, what did that look like for water? And so, not accounting for those project costs paid down, water had a net cash flow in 2024 of about $2.1 million, which is a really healthy cash flow for water. That is essentially adding $2 million to, the $12 million of fund balances that we saw a few slides ago. So that is really good. It is a large cash flow, so you may be wondering, is that too high? My answer is not necessarily. We're going to get to it in a few slides, but water does have a pretty robust capital improvement plan, and I'm sure it's a capital improvement plan that has changed since we've prepared this report. Also, you kind of have to think of some context. When we put the revenues in here, that's total revenues, so that's operating and non-operating. There are many revenues, that contribute to that $6 million in total revenues that may not be forever, right? You guys received about $500,000 in interest income. That is a lot of interest income, and we're likely soon heading into a lower interest rate environment where you may not benefit from that level of interest income any longer. System development charges were also about another $500,000. I said the town is growing. We wouldn't anticipate you to stop growing, but at some point that growth may slow. Economic downturn could contribute to a slowed growth and where maybe water doesn't see as much system development charges. Same thing for like tap fees. The other $500,000 revenue that is in that $600,000 is a few years ago, water loaned sewer, was it 2.5 or 3.5 million to kind of get sewer through a rough patch, right? That is paid off this year, actually. I believe the final payment is this year. I'll confirm that in the sewer report. But so that's $500,000 right there. When that stops next year, you guys, won't necessarily see a $2 million positive cash flow. It'll be 1.5, right? And then if interest income comes in lower, that could cut in half. And so now we're down to 1.2. The 2.1, though, heading into, possibly a different economic environment is a very healthy cash flow for water to have to, reinvest in capital improvements for water. So it's a very good thing. Any questions on that?
Yeah.
Okay. So on page 4, I had mentioned you do see those budget columns, right? And there's 2 budget columns on page 4. The difference between the 2 is this time last year, the town submitted budgets for water and sewer to the DLGF, which is the Department of Local Government Finance, because the town kind of had this push where it wanted a more holistic budget. It offers, more transparency to taxpayers, things of that nature. So the town had started submitting sewer and water budgets with their townwide budget. So that is what the column of the adopted budget is. In our opinion, after we did this report, it is a little bit high. So our report, we skimmed through everything and we created the illustrative budget, which is the column right next to it. The illustrative budget is what we actually think you guys will spend and bring in, revenue and expense wise. So everything in our report
Page 5.
is based off of that. Do
4.
you have a question?
Administrative budget there.
Question?
The chart, it seems like it's matching page 5 instead of 4.
Oh, sorry. Yes, it does match the first 3 columns. I probably skipped ahead a little bit, but what I'm getting to is, since this report was done in May, and we are now in August, we did take the June financials pretty quick to compare June to your 2025 illustrative budget. I just wanted to clarify what the difference was between those two, and that it'll make a little more sense on the next slide. But what this slide is doing is, of course, you saw the first 3 years on slide 5, like you mentioned, but then we added the red column just to show you where the fund balances are as of June 30th. As you can see there, fund balances are essentially almost the exact same as what they were at the end of the year, and that's really good because you have spent down another $1 million in 25 of those project costs. So again, that you would expect to see a $1 million decrease in that red column total, but it's pretty much stayed stagnant, which means your other funds are remaining really healthy, if not gaining cash. The next slide makes a little more sense to what I was talking about, the adopted versus illustrative budget that you see starting on page 4. So what we wanted to do was, since we're kind of, here now in August doing a little bit financial check, was we wanted to compare how our disbursements and receipts through June tracking against the illustrative budget that we would suggest we're reviewing based off that a little bit better, but we did want to include the adopted budget in there just since it was the formally adopted budget by you all last fall. So if we just focus on the yellow versus the purple, the yellow is the illustrative budget, what we think will actually happen, versus the purple. Through June, your target should be about 50%, right? That's halfway. So the first sets of column total operating disbursements are at pretty close to that 50%. 47% of the illustrative budget has been spent through June. And then if you look at operating receipts, this one stood out to me a little bit more, although I'm not super concerned about it because I think it very well could be a timing issue of maybe billings and or receipt of those charges. That one is a little bit low than what we would expect. It's at 32%, and so that means 32% of the illustrative budget has been collected, operating revenue-wise. I receive the monthly financials from Katie and Beth every single month, and so my plan is to kind of keep an eye on that just to make sure if it is a timing issue, we catch back up to where we think we need to be. If we have any concerns, at the end of this quarter, I'll be right back here talking to you all and revisiting maybe what's going on there, what's causing that. But my gut would tell me maybe it's just a timing issue of when things are either A, being billed and or those receipts are being recorded. So then, like I said before, we take all of that historical data and look forward about 5 years. So what we do is take your illustrative budgets that we just went through, add in your pilot payments that I spoke about, any debt payments that the utility has, as well as the estimated capital improvements, which I will show you in a few slides. And we just project out how is that going to look receipt versus disbursement wise, and then what we'll see on the next slide, but we won't move forward quite yet, is how does that affect the fund balance. So this chart, I know it's kind of busy, a lot going on with a lot of colors, but you can see it breaks it down by year, and it breaks it down, there's a receipt column and a disbursement column. So where you see receipts are lower than disbursements, you have a negative cash flow, right? So you're eating into those cash reserves. Where you see receipts are higher than disbursements, you have a positive cash flow like you did in 2024, so you're gaining cash. For the most part, most years are positive cash flow when you get to 27, 28, and 29. In 25 and 26, you do see a potential negative cash flow, and that's simply based on the capital improvements as well as the remaining spend down of those project costs, and we'll review those here in a second. Having kind of, a few years of negative cash flow and a few years of positive cash flow, it's supposed to be that way, right? Your capital improvements aren't always going to happen when they're supposed to happen. You're going to have a few years where you build up that cash, and then a few years where you reinvest in the water utility. So this does not raise any red flags for us. What would raise a red flag is if the water utility had consistent years of negative cash flows. We would say, we need to review what is causing that and how to address it. So then if you look on the next slide, even with those few years of positive and negative cash flows, what does that look like against our fund balances? So what this chart is telling you, the yellow line are the estimated ending fund balances for the water utility. So you can see 24 actual, like we saw a few slides ago, is at 12.2 million. When we account for all of the activity we just saw on the chart previously, capital, revenues, operating disbursements, you can see that line through 2029 and kind of where it ends up. So you can see that pretty big negative cash flow in 25 and 26. Again, this is solely due to capital and remaining project costs from the 2021 bonds. Then you can see it's, slightly gaining cash in those future years, going from 7.7 million in 26 to about 9.2 million in 29. So, not rapidly gaining, remaining pretty steady, which is what we would want to see. So then you compare that with the other two lines, which the teal are the recommended reserves. So that would be, best practice of what you're holding in those funds at all time. And then the required reserves are what are the absolute minimum, what you have to have in those funds at all times. And that's just due to legal reasons, due to your outstanding bonds. So really, we want you to be at or above that teal line. Even with the major I won't say it's major. It looks like it's major, but a lot of it is spending down your bond proceeds, so we'll say major. Even with that major decline in cash in 25 and 26, you guys are still well above that teal line where you should be. So all of those capital projects that you're planning as well, none of that makes us as your financial advisor uncomfortable. Now, if there was a major change in those projects, from what we'll review here on the next slide, of course, we would want to know about it to make sure, if water can't cash fund those capital projects, what are the other options? Is it a financing? Is it delaying, etc.? So that'll take me to the next slide, which is the capital plan that, again, we had prepared this with feedback from Mike and Bill back in, I believe it was April or May. We came here on site, and it was when we sat down with all of the department heads. So again, just looking at this, and we anticipate there was about $2 million in 2024 left in that bond proceeds fund. That will be, used for some of these capital projects, but for example, in 2026, there is that big water main project, which is driving, a lot of that decrease that you see on the previous slide. And that was a quote that we received from Mike and Bill a few months ago. So again, if there are changes to this, we would welcome your feedback after a review, as well as yours and Mike's again too, or Bill's again too, Mike. This is really the driver of what cash does. Reviewing all of the financials, we know your rates can afford operations. It's really operations and your debt payments. It's really your capital payments that drive what can be afforded, what isn't, are rates adequate, etc. So if there are any major changes to this at any point in time in the year, we would want that feedback.
I have some feedback for you.
Okay, perfect.
So, with capital are typically one-time expenditures.
Yes.
There's some things that is being proposed or was proposed in that. And it spells it, like maintenance, distribution maintenance, water treatment plant maintenance, general maintenance and supplies. To me, those should not be in the capital budget. Those are ongoing costs, unless there's a project that you have, let's say, you're only going to, I'm just throwing something out, I don't even, know, filter media that you're going to change out once every 5 years or
Yes.
something like that, where you might dump that into a capital program, because it's like a one-time expense every 5 years or every
Yep.
3 years, and you can kind of plan for that. But to put in general maintenance, things like that, that's part of your normal day-to-day operating. And that's where I think it should be, and not in the capital program. Because capital is meant to, just like you had said previously, you program it, but if that program year you don't have the funds for it, you may have to shift it to an out year. Well, if you're counting on, some of these funds to do your normal distribution maintenance, you can't really shift those back. That's something that has to be done, and that's where, to me, you could get in trouble with funding your normal daily operating budget. You run the risk of all of a sudden, I need that money for water main repair, clamps, whatever, or something else, or something in the treatment plant that you normally count on, chemicals or whatever it may be.
Right.
Because I don't have the breakdown of what all this is. But that's where I think from a financial standpoint, and you as an advisor should be advising to say this should really not be in the capital and should be in the operating.
Yes, I think this could go both ways, and I think it depends on, what it is. I think a lot of these, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know our discussion was a few months ago, treatment plant maintenance, that is more of an allowance of $150,000 per year for, if something breaks and something has to be replaced at the treatment plant. That is categorized as a capital improvement, because the town has a capital asset policy, which typically anything over $5,000 is a capital asset. So, if something breaks or needs fixing that is $1,000, that's not going to, hit the town's capital asset. However, if something breaks and needs replaced for $50,000 at the treatment plant, and I'm not a treatment plant operator to give you an example of what would break for $50,000, in the clerk treasurer's office, when that expense is recorded, it's going to, by their policy and by State Board of Accounts policy, it's going to have to go into the town's and the water utilities capital assets, just based on that policy and what's considered. So I agree.
But aren't you able to do like a budget amendment where you say, okay, we weren't planning for the well to go out, and now we got to drill a
Yes.
new well.
Yes.
And we didn't program it in our capital. It's an emergency repair. And under emergency type things, aren't you able to amend your budget and say, well, I'm going to take money from capital fund project and now spend it for that well replacement, and if I have to move a project back, I move a project back.
Yes.
I just worry about day-to-day operations. If you're starting to fund day-to-day operations out of a capital program, that's not good financial policy. I've been doing this for 42 years in water and wastewater, and capital is capital. It's one-time expenditures. It's
Right.
not meant for maintenance. You put your maintenance and your normal, it's like salaries and everything else, that goes in your
Yes.
normal daily operating. You can create a fund in that daily operating that says for emergency repairs, and you put in a dollar amount. Maybe it is 150, but it's still in that, and you program that year after year after year in your operating. Doesn't say you use it for that, for anything else, but it's there if something happens.
Yes.
And then that way it gives you a good capital. Otherwise, you're going to have to fund that, some of these from now until eternity in your capital program. And that's not necessarily the best way to, I feel, as far as financing a water program.
Yeah, and I don't think, and I can confirm that the, utility clerks and the clerk treasurer's office is, to your point, funding major capital items out of the operating budget. I don't think they're doing that. I think
No,
this
I'm
exercise.
not saying that. I'm saying the opposite, where you should fund your daily expense out of a daily, don't go into your capital fund.
Right, I don't think they are, is my response to that. What this exercise did was really to, put on paper that can the water utility afford $1 million a year in capital improvements? And the answer is yes. So this necessarily, isn't saying like we're going to use operating budgets for the treatment plant maintenance of $150,000 a year. And Mike, if you have any thoughts, let us know. It's more so having that allowance there and planned for and built into your rate structure in the event that something for $50,000 at the treatment plant breaks and is categorized as a capital improvement. Does water have the ability to replace that with cash? And the answer is yes. However,
True, but I just look at it as a financial report and as a budget,
yeah.
and what you're planning for, and that's what this board is here to do, is help plan for that.
Yeah, again,
It should be capital, and it's it's like a one-time expense that you program, if you're gonna paint a water tower. Okay, you're gonna paint a water tower
Yes.
this year or next year, whenever it is, but you're not gonna paint that for another 15 years.
right.
That's your capital expense.
Yeah.
It's a one-time shot, and it takes you, I just, when you start doing distribution maintenance, what is that? And why is it in capital? If you're replacing pumps and stuff like that, and you've got those scheduled to be replaced, that may be something that's capital, but to me, I don't want to see it used as a slush fund.
Yeah, I agree.
What's the difference between distribution maintenance and general maintenance? And
Mike, do you have any thoughts there?
It'd be like the building, public works,
would be which one? That'd be
general maintenance.
General.
Or any maintenance at the treatment plant.
But I mean, that wouldn't be something that would be done every single year, right? At those kind of costs, or is yes, no, or?
Possibly, yes.
Because I mean, it's the same thing like John's saying, it's like, well, that's $250,000 in that every year.
Again, I think, specifically like where you see the maintenance lines, in discussions with, Bill and Mike, that was more of like an allowance factor, put in the capital plan. So, maybe to your point, we revisit this and remove those allowance lines. And that's fine. To play devil's advocate and to think of the risk there is if you're only ever acting in real time, let's say 250,000 of the building, does need to happen 1 year and it wasn't budgeted for, it wasn't planned for, there's no, or less, proactiveness of planning for that expense. You're more acting in real time of like, oh, we have to review, now we have this $300,000 expense we didn't plan for.
don't you have
But isn't that what your reserves are for?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
So
what I was gonna
that's what your reserves are for. If something pops up that nobody could have planned for or whatever, it just happened, that's what you tie into your reserves for.
Okay. So we can revisit this capital plan with Mike and Bill and provide an updated report. So what it would show is then, if we remove all of the maintenance lines that were more thought of to be an allowance, it would remove, about 500, 600,000 annually from that capital plan.
Right.
Again, only painting a better future outlook for water.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
One quick question on the chart, this one. So these lines that are on this sheet, were they added to this one already? This
Yes.
one? So
Yes.
this is,
So
has
those-
this included?
Correct.
Okay.
So the lines with your fund balances account for everything. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let me make that note there. The final slide, or sorry, I have two more slides. This was a request from Patty. To provide, in our report, you'll see we provide a comparison graph of St. John's water and sewer bills, the total utility bill, compared to a state average. And Patty had asked if we maybe would expand on that a little bit more in our presentation to show not only a state average, but of neighboring communities. And so that's what this slide does here. So we do include both water and sewer on here because, when the bill goes to the user, they probably don't pay much attention to how much they're paying in water or how much they're paying in sewer. They're just paying their bill. So for a 4,000 gallon user, which is the state's kind of average for, a family of four, normal kind of mid-class household, they're using 4,000 gallons. Total bill is $42. For water, it is $16.96, which you can see on this graph. And from my experience working with water and sewer utilities across the state, is a very low rate for water and sewer as well. You guys are pretty much neck and neck with Schererville. And then you can see as you look further down the chart, it only gets higher. And the state average there is actually from Baker Tilly does every few years a comparative water and sewer rate analysis where we pull all the data from all the communities across the state and kind of come up with those state averages. And so that state average is for communities across the state of St. John's size. I believe it's about 15 to 25,000 population is what that number compares to. So St. John's rates are pretty low, and you guys have a very positive cash flow. A lot of that is due to that growth that we had mentioned that you guys see consistently year over year. It plays a big part for your tap fees and your system development charges to see those positive revenues reinvest in the utility and keep those rates low for your taxpayers.
No, the original one that we got before you added Schererville and Dyer, it said that you used towns that were 15 to 25,000.
Yes.
Okay, so that would not be using, on the original sheet that we got, that would not be you comparing Schererville, Dyer, but it would include towns like Shelbyville, Jasper, Lebanon, Clarksville, towns that are actually purchasing American water for their stuff, which would drive their cost up. So that's why you might be seeing a higher state's average.
Yeah, it's.
Whereas compared to, you know what I'm saying? We're
yes.
a big town, and we shouldn't be compared to somebody in the middle of a cornfield.
No.
Sounds where Andy Griffith's taking a vacation.
Right.
It
does include those communities. Those comparative studies do not go, every single water utility is, has their own uniqueness, whether they're, selling water, buying water, whatever. The comparative study doesn't do that. It's just if you are a resident somewhere in the state of Indiana, living in a town or city of this size, what's the average bill?
Yes,
So
but the original
it-
chart doesn't
Correct.
have these other ones on here.
Correct.
I'm glad you put these on because
Yeah.
the people that move into this area are more worried about Lake County. They're not worried
Yes.
about southern Indiana.
Yes, I agree.
And Lowell, they're what, American Water also, right? So they're purchasing water from a third party. Cedar Lake's got the same thing, which is driving up those prices too, which, like I said, is changing that state average.
Right.
To base
Oh, yeah.
ours on, well, we're cheap,
Yeah, all of these communities, I will mention though, were included in that state average too. So you have your
No,
lake
on your
counties.
First one, it said 15 to 25,000. That
Sorry.
would not include Crown Point, Cherville.
They were in their own population buckets, but in our study, if that makes sense. They were included in the study. They likely have a different state average because they're of a different size. But to my point, the study we do doesn't, pick and choose what communities. It's every community in Indiana, or as many as we can include is what it is. But yes, what we wanted to provide here, and again, especially at Patty's request as well, is very useful to you all to compare the neighboring communities for your knowledge, as well as to provide to the residents of St. John.
So, and then St. John is actually more efficient on their water and sewer than a lot of these other areas, right?
In terms of,
Well, I mean, when you look at our percentage, the ratio between our water and our sewer compared to
Oh.
Lowell, I mean, without, when you start looking at some of these percentages, we are very efficient on our wastewater and everything.
yeah, absolutely. That can always, like Crown Point, for example, the makeup of water and sewer could vary in every community. Just if, sewer had a huge project that drove up rates or something, and maybe water didn't, water can get, by for a few years. So the makeup won't always be the same, and there's a lot of variables there. So that's why, too, we provided the total. But yes, honestly, it is impressive to me, just working with communities across the state, that St. John has been able to keep the rates this low and continue to operate as financially healthy as it has. So that's, again, you all played a part in that, in operating the water and sewer financials. And as a board, I, again, commend you all, but it's impressive to me, honestly, because mostly in rural areas, but the rates are just getting outrageous, as you can imagine, for customers. So,
Mike, he doing a good job, will you?
yeah, good job, Mike.
Will this slide be part of the one that's emailed to us?
I'll
Yes.
print it right after I'm done operating the computer. I'll go and
Okay,
print it.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep.
And I requested this more as a defensive tactic, because so many people are moving in, and they're moving from Illinois, where it's just a completely different beast. But they need to see the value in St. John compared to Lowell and Cedar Lake and other communities,
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. There are many benefits to living in a fast-growing community like St. John, and I would say this is one of them, is the low water and sewer rates, for sure.
Thank
So.
you for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. So final slide is just kind of a generic recommendation slide, and we've already talked about a few of these things. We're going to proactively update and review those capital plans. We already have some changes. We will update and can provide kind of an updated forecast graphs with the new changes to the capital plan. What I would like to do is maybe start those conversations again with you all and Mike and Bill at the end of the year to revisit those capital plans, and then kind of take us into 2026 with a pretty solid capital plan, at least for 26. Obviously, no one has a crystal ball. They're going to change. But I think, reviewing those a little bit more often would be a recommendation, and I would ask you all for feedback. So I'm going to be looking to scheduling something maybe in November or December to review that with you all. On that note, I'd mentioned, if there are major changes in those capital plans, major changes upwards, water may need to consider debt tools in the future. At that point, if that is on the table, it will be something we need to discuss in terms of what that looks like for rates. But at this point, unless there are major changes, we don't think that's necessary right now. Monitor those operational budgets to actual, which we've been helping you do. And again, I'm going to keep a little bit closer eye on the operating revenues. And then, which we will continue to review the financial health and the rate adequacy like we do annually at the end of every year. So, any other thoughts before we conclude, or any questions?
Anybody on the board? Thank you, very.
Yeah, I hope this was helpful to you all. If you think of any other follow-up questions, my contact info is, my email is in the slide, and Patty has my email as well, so does Mike. So please reach out to me or Eric Walsh, who couldn't be here tonight. He's the other financial advisor for the utilities. Feel free to reach out to us at any time. I know we don't get a lot of FaceTime with you all, but rest assured we are always in the background doing things for not only water and sewer, but for the town as well. So feel free to reach out to us at any time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the approval of minutes for July 16th, 2025. Looking for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second?
I will second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved. New or old business? I don't believe we have any. Payment of bills. Accounts payable voucher dated August 2025 representing payment for payroll, supplies, services, and equipment rendered to the Water District in the total combined of $46,857.94. Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second that.
Motion made and second. Under the question? All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carried. Item B, accounts payable voucher dated August 20th, 2025, representing payment for payroll, supplies, services, and equipment rendered to the water utility in a combined total of $1,172,426.76. Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
I will second that.
Under the question. I do have a question. We have a payment on here for Best, was it Best Equipment, I believe?
Yes.
Did I get that on the right one? So that is for a payment to for a television camera rig. The question I have is, one is I'm not sure that this should be taken out of water because it's a television rig for televising sewer. So, and we don't have a PO associated with it on our docket here. There's a number, but we don't actually have the copy of the purchase order. And I'm not sure if this was approved by the city council or what, but I'm not quite sure why it's on our docket. So I would be,
I'll let you refer to Mike as far as why the distribution as is. It was approved by town council back in April, and the distribution of funds, Mike, I think will be able to explain why out of water.
Be using it for preventative maintenance at the treatment plants for our lagoons, for backwash lagoons.
okay,
Possibility of So when we replace portions of water main to obviously disinfect it and possibly put it in to check portions were not, it's quite a neat little gadget and can do quite a bit of things. But basically for preventative maintenance at the treatment plant, the drain that drains the lagoon all the way back through Bull Run Ditch needs televised quite often.
Okay, I could see that. The other question I have, and the town manager isn't here, and neither is the clerk treasurer. You know, this board is approving payments on dockets, and I know the last time that we had spoke with the clerk treasurer that there should be a purchase order that was approved or whatever, and it sounds like the town council already approved this. So if the town council approved it and they're taking funds out of the water system, then I feel the town council should be actually making the approval on the payment, because they're the ones that approved it, and this board had nothing to do with it at that time. So I'm a little, you know, because my name goes on it, you know, along with the rest of the board members, that we're approving a docket that's something that we really didn't have any approval of ahead of time. You know, like when we did the Vector and stuff like that, it came before us and we approved everything, and you know, it was divided up between different, between stormwater and sewer and some things. But in this case, you know,
So do we know in what circumstances the town council can make a motion to approve something that would come out of the water budget?
I don't know. And that's one of my next things is, you know, do we request the town attorney, municipal attorney to come before us and present a couple things of just what our approval means and what we're liable for and not liable for. You know, if we sign off and approve this, are we, this board is held liable for whatever happens? You know, I would hate to, you know, it's a little confusing, so, you know, I feel like almost if this board were to turn around and say, you know what, we're approving something to be taken out of the general fund, and just do it, and then it goes on the town council's docket and they have to approve it. It's kind of the same thing except reverse here.
Right.
You know, they approved it, but yet nothing came in front of us, and now we're asking to pay for it. And this is also coming up on the wastewater docket too, different amount. And the other part of that too is, you know, I don't know what, you know, by state law, we're liable to make sure certain things are done in a certain way, you know, based on what the cost is. You know, if it's over 50,000, you gotta, you know, at least get 3 quotes, you know, things like that. And we haven't seen any of that, and that may have happened. You know, I don't know, but it probably went to the town council. And, or if it is something that is a specialty nature, there has to be some documentation that says, okay, this is why it's, no other vendors bidding on it or was contacted or whatever. There has to be something in line that basically says we followed the state procedures. And that's, in front of you, that's what that document is. It kind of spells it out. Different levels of when it has to go out for bidding and when it can be just some 3 quotes that come in, or if it's a specialized, you know, professional services don't, but there are some things that do fit under the special categories, you know, but there has to be some documentation on it that says why this is not, we're only going with one vendor or whatever the case may be.
From what I understand is the town council handles the water utility budget and the water board handles the bond money.
Well,
That was passed in, can't remember what year, from the town council.
and if that's the case, that's fine, but then why are we approving a expenditure docket? You know, that's my question for
Get
the
it.
town attorney. You know, if that's the case, because we're sending our names to it, they may approve it, but who's actually responsible for when you sign the document and we sign the form after each board meeting that we approved everything on that docket when we had no control of the fund or oversight of that fund? So that's kind of my legal question because, you know, it's got all our names on it, and I don't, somebody coming around and says, well, guess what, it's time to sue you or whatever, for whatever reason, now are we on the hook? Or is it strictly the town council's on the hook? And that's where we need to find out from the municipal attorney, just what our duties, responsibilities are. Is it just a recommendation, you know, to the town council and they sign off on everything, or how that works? And, you know, Amber, I don't know if you have any insight on that or not, as far as financials.
I'm not an attorney, so I'll preface that. I do think you should talk to your town attorney because, you know, like, not every community has a water and sewer board.
Right.
So in some ways, it's very unique. A lot of communities do likewise have like park boards. And so typically how it works would be the boards, you know, you all were appointed by town council, I believe. You are the recommending board, and then the final, you know, sign off are the elected officials, which would be town council. However, like Mike had mentioned, there could be local policies and procedures that were adopted that I don't recall off the top of my head, kind of outlining the duty of those responsibilities. So I can connect with your town attorney and let him know that we spoke, and then him and I can also not only work with the clerk treasurer and town council to review those policies, but also review the Indiana code of if there is any statutory requirements or guidelines to provide to you all, and we can follow up if that's okay. Unless there's any other question or comment of the known policies in the town, I can certainly work with your attorney to review that. And I'm sure he would have everything as well. But I can relay the message as well and provide thought when I'm able to review the Indiana code.
I just want to make sure, because I know in the past, if we didn't approve a claims list or something was taken off the claims list, we've even had to have special meetings to approve that. You know, once it got straightened out because there were some discrepancies. So we want to make sure that
Right.
just what our duties are and what we're obligated, and so we all know, you know, when we sign our name, what does that mean?
Yep, I completely agree. I will connect this week with your attorney, and we will follow up on that and just kind of, you know, rein all the different carriages together and make sure everyone's on the same page. And I'll do the same for sewer because it makes sense for them to be on the same page as a board as well.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And there were 3 quotes getting, and it was purchased under Sourcewell. Not unlike the vac truck.
Okay. I appreciate that, Mike.
Well, that all being said, I can rescind my motion pending clarification. Or do we move forward?
I think let's, this is just for discussion here, the board, since it's under question. Would the board be comfortable with approving the motion with the understanding that the payment for best equipment on the docket be held until we get clarification from the municipal attorney on whether we have the authority to make that approval on the docket? Does that make sense?
I would be comfortable with that as long as it's consulted also with Baker Tilly between the two.
Okay, you
Is that an amendment to the motion?
Yeah.
either that or, yes, it's just added to the a motion, and then we would go first and second.
Okay, I will amend my motion for the approval of the docket pending the approval of the line item for best equipment with the approval of the town attorney in consultation with Baker Tilly.
We have a motion, second.
Is that gonna be for the whole docket? Or
Yeah,
just-
We're approving the whole docket with the exception of the best, the payment to Best Equipment until we get the legal opinion on whether we have the right to approve that or what our liability is for that. Because that the town council has already approved it. You know, it's very confusing. But I don't necessarily want to, either we pull that item off completely, but then that, you know, we can do that also. That's under the question, you know.
Is that also gonna be on the sewage?
It will be.
With the wastewater?
Yep.
And that's where it's bigger, right?
Yes.
Just a portion of it, though.
127.
And this one's
Only
only,
16,
this is only 1,600,
16,000.
or 16,000. I would just hate to penalize a vendor because of some mismanagement on our end. So,
What I was thinking, but at the same time, I don't want to do something that we
Right.
have no right of doing, but so.
Can we approve the whole thing contingent on the
That's
attorney's opinion?
yeah, that item would
Right.
be put on the side pending the approval,
Right.
that line item.
Kathy, would that work for you in accounting?
You would have to make your motion because you're not approving the document in its entirety. Am I correct?
Correct.
There's a motion being made because Patty rescinded. And I didn't understand if that was the whole docket you're rescinding, or you're making a motion for a different motion.
Well, the
Let's do
motion
that.
is to approve the entire docket without the line item for best equipment in the amount of $16,938.20, pending the approval from the town attorney in consultation with Baker Tilly.
That's your motion.
Yes. If that's acceptable.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carried.
And there is a PO number on here, we just don't have a copy of the PO.
Correct.
Is it an wastewater one or an ours?
Hmm?
Is that an ours or the wastewater?
Oh, let's see where we're at here now.
Oh, we don't have a PO.
Yeah, we just, before we were promised. to
Reports
get
and correspondence.
PO.
Robinson Engineering, project updates?
Thank you, Mr. President. The Grimmer Construction is working away on the well houses. If you have not been out, I would at least take a drive by 9. You can see it right from the roadway. Forward number 8, they did finish up the shingles today, and they finished up the interior paneling. They're going to start pouring concrete on 9 tomorrow. That's a little out of order, but 9 is a little easier accessible for them, so they're going to knock that out first. And then after that, it's really all just interior, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing until they're done. That's really concludes my report.
Just put on the wells, any change orders or anything?
We had a few minor ones probably come to you next. Like we changed the floor sink, the floor drain to a different format. Really not a whole lot. I can't think of anything. We are going to change some stuff in the plant that will most likely be a savings. We did a meeting at the plant, look for some savings. So that will offset anything that comes up. But yeah, that'll be a next meeting probably.
Mike, anything from Public Works?
I got nothing.
Anything from the board?
No. You don't want a lot today.
Okay. Anything from the public? We have no, looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second that.